Welcome back everyone to Tarantula Exotics, and today we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to try and convert one of these into one of these. So, for those of you guys who live in Canada, you are well aware that trying to find an enclosure dedicated and made for a tarantula is very difficult. And as a result, what's going to happen is you're going to find yourself making a lot of like Rubbermaids and things like that, which are cheap, they're inexpensive, and they're easy to set up. However, they don't look the nicest, and it's always kind of challenging to find one that's made specifically for arboreals. That's where these come in. These are Betta tanks, and as you can see, this is a Betta tower. FYI, by the way, the worse the enclosure is for the Betta, the better it is for a tarantula. What do I mean by that? Let's start by going over this enclosure very carefully, or sorry, this Betta tank very carefully. And I hesitate to call it a Betta tank because it is absolutely atrocious. First of all, no filtration. Secondly, way too small. This is 1.25 liters or 0.33 gallons, which is absolutely awful. It comes with absolutely nothing. The top has a lid. I guess that's the only saving thing I will say that actually is beneficial to a Betta because they can jump. I don't actually keep Bettas or anything. I keep tarantulas, but I stumbled across these a little while ago and wanted to make it a project so that we could turn this into an actual arboreal enclosure for a spiderling. And so here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to show you guys a step-by-step tutorial on how to do it. I've made some modifications over the years on things that have changed since implementing the strategy. And this is actually going to be part of a new series that I'm going to call Improvised Enclosures. The basic premise of the series is to take everyday objects and turn them into enclosures that are made for a tarantula and that will actually benefit them and help them in just creating a livable environment for them. Now, we'll be improvising a couple other Betta tanks in the future in this series that I'll be converting into tarantula cages, but in the meantime, this is going to have to do. The one thing I will say is because I live in Canada, I do not have access to some really, really well-made enclosures down in the States. I believe Jamie's Tarantulas has some really cool tarantula enclosures that are designed for tarantulas that they sell, but unfortunately don't ship to the state or to Canada. And same with, I believe it's tarantulacages.com has some as well. So if you want to check either of those websites, if you are down in the States, I highly recommend them. This is actually not a cheaper option by any means. In fact, you're probably better off getting an actual dedicated enclosure for tarantulas. They look great, and of course they're designed for your spider. These are kind of an improvisation, so they're going to have some minor flaws, which I'll talk about later down the road. And there's going to be a little bit more kind of jimmy rigging to make it work, but trust me, this will work, and these work great. So let's get started. Let's go down and check out how we're going to turn this. Oops, wrong side. This into this. Okay, now that we've seen what we want it to look like, which is this guy right here, we're going to take a standard Betta tower and turn it into that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to open this up so you can see exactly what's inside. We're going to take out this Betta tower. We're going to take the box and throw it off to the side because we don't need it anymore. Take the wrapper off. We're going to take this background off. Something else we don't really need. Take the lid off. Instruction manual out the door. And here's what we're left with. So we have the tower itself as well as this lid. Now you'll notice in this lid that there's a lot of bad things happening here for a tarantula. It can get up underneath there, especially for a spiderling. And there's of course this giant hole here. So how do we fix that? Well, thankfully these things actually come apart pretty easily. So we unclick this. You'll see there's little tabs here and here. They just pop out. And we'll take that and put it off to the side. So this is going to be the top portion. So we're going to work from the bottom, which is going to be right here. What we're going to do next is we're going to grab our lid from the crickets. And I have a couple of these put aside already. So we'll grab, I think they're both the same size, so it doesn't matter which one we grab. But again, I keep all these lids from the cricket containers just for this exact purpose. And so we'll use this one, I guess. So we'll take this and we're gonna put it right over top here. Actually, this one might make more sense like this. And all I'm gonna do is actually trace out this square with going a little bit over the edges here with a Sharpie, which I have one put aside right over here. And then we will turn this into a top portion. So it looks like it starts, again, I'm going off to the side a little bit here. I'm trying to make this so that it overlaps just a little bit. And there, and wait, where was it? Should be about there. And there. Okay, so we've traced this out. Now we're actually gonna cut it out. This is kind of the challenging part. I've cracked a couple of these lids before trying to do this, so let's hope it works out better this time. I'm gonna try something new. I don't know if it's gonna work out. Thankfully, we have an extra lid just in case. But I'm gonna try and cut through right here, this little crack right here, just like that. And that should give us a head start for the scissors to go through and be able to clean out the rest. So put that off to the side. And so, cut this out. Okay. Thankfully it didn't crack too bad there. In fact, it actually cracked in our favor. So we're gonna be cutting down that line anyways. I don't know if you guys can see this, if it's on camera or not. It's a little tough to do. Turn it and then just cut around this black line. Okay, so that's one side done. Next one, we're gonna do the same thing. I'm sure there's an easier way to do this, but I haven't figured it out yet, so scissors seems to be my best option. Okay, that's okay, we want that to snap off, should be easier for the rest. Same thing along this side. I didn't stand this very well either, as you can see there's a lot of room on here I could have used, and instead I'm really tight to the corner on this side. But let's see if I can get around here. Okay, and just over here. And there we go. Now let's make sure this fits. Again, thankfully I have a backup just in case it does not. And how are we looking here? Right on the edge, just like that. Now I have played around with some glue here to try and glue this into place, and I'll be honest, I don't feel like it's quite secure enough. So instead, I've actually been using tape of all things. So just like that, and knowing that this is the bottom, we're actually going to tape it from the top portion, which is right here. See if I can get this line back up. There we go. Okay, and we're going to tape one piece on each side. Don't worry if it overlaps on these holes here, because we'll actually just pop them out afterwards. And this side, oh, it looks like I may have slid it just a little bit. Okay. Make sure that's stuck there. The bottom. And the right side. Okay, there we go. We still have plenty of airflow in the middle here. And this has now been all taped up. So what we have to do next is we're actually going to poke some holes where the clips go in. So I'm just going to use some tweezers. Poke some holes there. I'm hoping I didn't go too far down here. This is definitely crooked. This is more crooked than I'd like, but let's see if this worked out. So we want it to be right about a little over. That should be perfect. There we go. Okay. We're going to retape all this. Gonna retape this top part right here. Perfect. And now we can repoke the holes. And that should be good. Let's try it this time. Bottom side, make sure it lines up for the clips. 2 in there and 2 in there. And there we go. We can see here the tarantula can't really get underneath here. It's nice and taped up. You can add some extra glue just to make it more secure, but that's pretty much it. So now we've got the lid taken care of. And of course, you don't have to use this top piece. I just like it. But if you want more airflow, you can just leave it open like that, and it'll just work just as well. But let's put this back in. Next part is setting up the actual enclosure itself. We're gonna grab some substrate, fill it up, and then add some decorations, and of course, put the water dish in. I have got some substrate that I had off to the side. And we're gonna pour this in. And I know this is an arboreal setup, but I still like putting a lot of substrate in there because a lot of arboreals as slings will still become semi-fossorial, so they will create burrows. And we got that. I have got a plant, or a fake plant here, which I just pulled off one of those big Exoterra vines. We're gonna place this guy in here as well. And I'm gonna put it right in this corner here. This will act for the fossorial slings that do choose to be fossorial in this arboreal setup to give them some anchor points for the webbing and as well as have some options for digging. Let's grab a piece of cork bark. And unfortunately I did run out of the cork bark rounds. So I'm gonna be making this one into more of a background slash angle thing. I'm gonna take my knife. This isn't the safest way to do it, but this is the way I'm gonna do it. Stab into it and cut off a piece. All right, once you've cut your cork bark to size, or ideally have something that was actually built for size, we can now put this in here. And I'm gonna create kind of like a cave thing right here. It's almost like a waterfall of cork bark. I think that looks pretty decent. It's got room underneath it. And it just barely hangs over the plant here, which provides some extra shelter. The last step is the water dish, and I'm gonna find out where I wanna place it. I'm thinking it's kind of right in here, just like that. Don't know if that actually lined up properly or not. I don't think it did. Let's try it. Okay, now it's a little bit better lined up. We're gonna have to wait for the glue to dry. I'm actually gonna stick a little bit more glue on the sides here. Which will hopefully help hold it in place a little better. And a little bit right underneath here. Perfect. And there we go. So obviously I'm gonna let this set for about 24 to 48 hours to make sure the glue is fully set and to make sure that any excess glue will scrape off so the tarantula doesn't get stuck. Although I do notice that the Gorilla Glue dries relatively non-sticky, which is good. So there's no issues with anything getting stuck there. But there you have it, a DIY tarantula enclosure that turned from a Betta Tank into a tarantula enclosure, just like that, and it's that easy. We put the lid back on. If I can make this fit. And I think I put it on upside down, and I did. So it's actually like this. There we go. And just like that, your tarantula enclosure is all good. It is actually taped from the bottom, so there's no way it's gonna get its leg stuck. That's right, that's why I planned it out. I'm glad I thought ahead and just forgot to remind myself. But there you go. A tarantula enclosure in, what was that, 10 minutes out of a Betta Tank, some substrate, piece of cork bark, fake plant, and a cheap water dish. Just like that. I would say the total cost of this was probably, if we take in that we didn't use the full cork bark, and we only used a fraction of the Exoterra vine I bought, I mean, realistically, I'd say this was about $13 to $14 built, and that's pretty much it. I'm going to buy crickets anyways when I get those lids. I'm going to keep using them. They seem to work pretty well. So if you guys have any ideas for another improvised enclosure, let me know down below in the comments, something you might want me to try and convert into an enclosure. This isn't rocket science, guys. This is super easy to do. I'm not a super handyman or anything like that. This took me all of, I don't know, half an hour to come up with when I was looking for an arboreal enclosure in the store. And since then, I've actually been using these non-stop. But that's going to do it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.